Good afternoon. I will call this Downtown Design Review Board for September 26th meeting to order. Ask for staff confirmation that the Kansas Open Meeting Act required notice has been properly provided.
Yes, I can confirm that the packet was posted and the required notice was provided.
Thank you. Item 1.3, roll call.
I will proceed with calling roll. Board Member Nelson.
Here.
Board Member Herman.
Here.
Board Member Cates.
Here.
Board Member Freeland.
Here.
Chair Manley.
Present.
So we have the full membership of the board present today, which is a quorum and allows us to proceed with today's agenda.
Item 2.1, approval of minutes. Were there any changes or concerns from the board? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
I move we accept the minutes from the September 12th meeting.
It has been moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. New business, item 3.1.
Under item 3.1 is a request for certificate of compatibility to install 2 new wall signs at the Lee Lofts project. These are kind of twin buildings that are located at the corner of Elm and North Santa Fe. And one of the buildings historically is identified as the H.D. Lee Mercantile Building, and the other one is been recognized as the Lee Lofts or Lee Hardware Building. Both of them are part of the Loft project, and in your packets you have an overview of the proposal from the project architect Maggie Gillum, and then we have the illustrations of the 2 proposed wall signs, and we have reviewed those. They are simplistic and they are somewhat historical or rustic in appearance, and they certainly will not dominate the facade of the building due to their small size and the large size of the building facade. So they appear to be proportionate in scale. They are simple in design. Due to their size, they're not going to obscure any prominent architectural features, and they are not illuminated. So they're very simple sign design and try to maintain a little bit of the rustic warehouse look. And so we've done an analysis, and as we noted, in the C4 district, sign area allowance is based on your street frontage, and this complex has street frontage on Santa Fe, on Elm, and on 5th, so it's allowed a substantial amount of signage, but it is primarily used as a residential dwelling, multifamily in nature, and so the signs are not needed to advertise any business, but simply to identify the 2 buildings. So we believe that these signs conform with the design guidelines for downtown Salina. And on page 5, we've identified alternatives for you. You could approve the application to allow the 2 wall signs to be installed as proposed, finding that they conform with the design guidelines. You could approve the application subject to any conditions approved by a majority of the board. You could postpone consideration this afternoon if you think you need additional information from staff or the applicant, or you could deny the application as presented if you can make findings that would justify such a denial. So we have recommended, it's kind of our standard condition that we have with these proposals to make sure that what the board sees is what we get. And so our recommendation would be approval subject to the condition that for some reason there are significant changes made to the sign design or materials, that those be brought back to staff, and then we would determine whether additional review by this board is needed. But with that, we have project architect Maggie Gillum. If you have questions about the current project or where that is, want a progress update. We also noted that this property is on the National Register of Historic Places, but you are looking at this just in terms of how these signs relate to our sign design guidelines for downtown. So with that, staff's open to any questions, or if you have questions of the architect, feel free to address those to Maggie.
All right. Any questions from the board of staff?
No, I don't have any questions. I recommend the rest of the members to approve it. But
I have one question before any approval. Is the design and the material, is it basically matching the historic landmark, gold and oiled bronze? I mean, this one, just to confirm.
Yeah, that's actually a bronze sign. So these are just vinyl signs, but the font is the same, the textile, and then the colors will be the same. But no, they can't. To have a bronze that big would be difficult to install and pricey. So, yeah.
Any other questions of the applicant? Any comments from the applicant?
I don't have any other comments. Pretty straightforward.
Yep.
So, all
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks.
All right, I'll bring it back to the board for a motion.
I move we approve CC 24-15, option number 2, with the city's recommendation that they have any significant changes be brought back to them for administrative approval.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Thank you.
Thanks.
Moving on to item 3.2.
Item 3.2 is a continuation of an application that there may not be anybody on the board still who remembers it, but in 2022 there was an application that was filed to modify the public parking lot located at the northwest corner of Santa Fe and Ash, and among those modifications is the removal of some fairly substantial mature trees, one of which had clearly outgrown the island that was in, and the other one was borderline. So those were removed with the condition that the applicants, in this case the Chamber of Commerce, working with the representatives of the Salina Canvas Project and Boom Festival, come back with a replacement planting plan. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Michelson, who's at the graphics board there, and he'll kind of walk you through the replacement plan that we're bringing back for you to look at.
Thank you, Dean. So this subject property is part of the original town of Salina. It was platted in 1862, and the property itself consists of 4 platted lots. And sorry, I'm trying to bear with me. I'm doing graphics as well. And this is a public parking lot that was improved and modified in the 1980s as part of a downtown redevelopment streetscape project. And the landscaping in and around the parking lot was installed at that time. The northwest corner of North Santa Fe Avenue and Ash Street was the former location of the Lamer Hotel, and that hotel was torn down in 1966. And the north portion of this lot was converted to private property in the early 70s, and in the early 80s, the entire lot became a paved parking lot. The property was purchased by the Salina Area Chamber of Commerce in 1985, and the existing landscaping in the parking lot was installed as part of the 1985 Downtown Streetscape project. In 2002, the City of Salina entered into a lease agreement with the Chamber of Commerce to make this a public parking lot, and that lease was renewed in 2012. Although the Salina Area Chamber of Commerce is the landowner, the city of Salina is responsible for maintenance and improvement of the parking lot. And in 2022, as part of the Salina Canvas Project and upcoming Boom Festival, an artist proposed to paint a mural on the south wall of the Mid-Kansas Title Company building at 217 North Santa Fe. And the Chamber of Commerce proposed to remove 2 large shade trees on that. I'm gonna switch the graphic here. So there were 2 large shade trees at the northern part of this lot that were removed as part of the initial certificate of compatibility case. And they had outgrown their planter islands, and they were affecting both the parking lot and the south wall of the Mid-Kansas Title building. And they proposed to maintain landscape islands, but were proposing to plant ornamental grasses in the islands in place of the mature trees. On September 22nd, 2022, the DRB reviewed the application and approved a motion to approve the certificate of compatibility for the proposed parking lot, and with modifications. And in their action, they had a condition that if any significant changes to the project as approved were to occur, that it would be brought back to, that it would be determined whether it needed to be brought back to the board by staff. And ultimately, this staff has determined that this needs to come back to the board to approve the work that was done. The effect of the board's action was to authorize the removal of the two trees and replacement by ornamental grasses. In 2023, during the course of the project, the city's Public Works Department worked on replacing or repairing damaged curbs, as well as resurfacing and restriping the lot. And this graphic shows some of the work that they were doing up in the northern part of the lot. They went through and replaced basically all of the curbs in the parking lot. And during the course of that work, the Director of Public Works, Jim Teutsch, determined that it was in the best interest of the city and motorists who typically use the parking lot and the public in general to not rebuild or replace a planter island that was located in the northern part of the lot in the center here. And this was slightly different than what was approved by the DRB initially. And Mr. Teutsch provided a few factors that went into his decision-making that we've outlined in the report. It included multiple citizen complaints about the old island, making the parking lot difficult to navigate. The director understood that we would remove the island, but wasn't clear on that there was a condition that it needed to go back or whether it had to actually be replaced as an island. And ultimately, it was replaced with striping that creates the island there, but it's not a curbed island with landscape space in it. So the project proposal, as it was carried out and is before you now, the surface parking lot at the northwest corner of North Santa Fe Avenue and Ash, owned by the chamber and leased by the city. They did remove the 2 shade trees, and the replacement of the curbs has now been completed. City staff has worked with the chamber to finalize a proposed landscaping plan in order to install new landscape plantings in that island, or in the parking lot. And this graphic here, we created a series of site plans that all work off of the same base plan. This one shows what the conditions were before any work occurred. And so you can see there were these shade trees here, and this center portion here has the island still in it. What work was done was this tree was removed here. This tree was removed at the northwest or northeast corner, and this curb and island were removed. So now, as it exists now on the third page of this series of plans, it shows what the existing conditions are now. This is now striped with paint, so it's all asphalt with just striping to indicate the areas that are not parking stalls. In the northeast corner, there are a few plantings that have remained, or they're ornamental grasses, and there's a tree stump from the tree that was cut down. And there's a very small island just on the south side of that driveway that has one plant in it, but it does have available space to add landscaping. So that was incorporated into the proposed landscaping. On the south portion of the lot, these islands were not landscaped with plants. They had rock in them, and part of this proposed work is to actually just refresh those islands with new rock, because all of that was turned up during the work, during the curb replacement, and so that is in need of a refresh as well. And so because the work slightly differed from what was approved by the DRB, the staff is bringing this back for your consideration. And so the design guidelines that we've outlined were considered during the initial case, and the staff feels like the work that was done still adheres to those guidelines, and it still conforms to the zoning regulations. While the downtown design guidelines contain recommendations regarding parking lot location and design, the DRB doesn't have the authority to actually approve a parking lot design, which is what went into the initial consideration of the case. And they weren't proposing to change or modify the layout of the existing parking lot, but rather just removing the two trees and implement new landscaping in there. Given the fact that one of the islands is removed, planning staff has since reviewed the new layout, and we've worked with the chamber directly to come up with this proposed landscaping. It's been a combination of staff's time and input and effort from the chamber to work out what would be consistent with the streetscaping that exists along Santa Fe and would conform to the DRB guidelines. So the proposed landscaping plan, it mostly focuses on the northeast corner of that lot, and it has a variety of plants that have been approved by the chamber as the proposed design, and they are either selected directly from the city's xeriscape and planting list, or they have been approved by the city forester. So these plants have been reviewed by the city forester and considered appropriate for these beds at the density of plantings and the species themselves. And on the south end of the parking lot, as I said before, the proposal there is just to refresh the rock in that area. Those are under large shade trees, so the plants that would do well under that much shade would be a lot more high maintenance, and so we deemed that the rock would be appropriate just to remain there. So ultimately, the question for the board is what type of landscaping should be installed there, and is the proposed landscaping appropriate? And as I mentioned, there's a small island on the south side of that driveway that we added a few plantings to help offset the loss of that other island in the center of the parking lot as well. It's not a one-for-one replacement, but it does help add some plantings there that helps provide some landscape buffer from the street. And so ultimately, we've outlined some suggested findings on, I think it's page 7 of your report. And the board has, as staff sees it, the board has the following alternatives the board could approve a certificate of compatibility for the proposed parking lot island modifications with the removed shade trees and one island being replaced by ornamental grasses and plants as proposed initially by the chamber. Upon finding that the replacement planting plan conforms to the design guidelines for downtown Salina. 2, the board could approve a certificate of compatibility for the proposed parking lot island modifications subject to the condition that the removed shade trees be replaced by suitable trees, either in lieu of or in addition to the ornamental grasses and plants. The board could postpone consideration of this application if it believes that additional information is needed from the applicant or city staff in order to make a decision, or the board could deny the application as presented and decline to approve the proposed parking lot design. Staff would recommend that the board approve the proposed design, and staff feels that the layout meets the city's dimensional standards for parking lots and that the proposed plantings are appropriate for that location. And staff believes that either option number 1 or number 2 would conform to the design guidelines.
All right, thank you for that report. I'll start with one question for, I guess, option number 2 is replacing the removed tree with another tree. I guess why is that option even on the table? Is that a requirement that we like to see? If you take out a tree, put one back, or you know why that's?
It was
even
initially. It was in the initial report.
That was the
and
initial.
So I did leave it in there because I suppose it could be considered. It would affect visibility of the mural, and I think it would probably be most.
That defeats the purpose of taking the tree down in the first place.
Yeah.
Always within your discretion, if there's a tree removed, to require a tree to go in to replace it. However, as we look at the circumstances and the overall reason why the trees were removed, and you look at the other aspect, if you look at the corner of Santa Fe and Ash, and then Santa Fe going north of Ash, most of the streetscape landscaping there is ornamental grasses. So what they're proposing here is consistent with that pattern minus the tree. But as Mr. Michelson said, since we gave that option as an initial option, we left it on the table as an option, and you were free to regard it as unrealistic or not appropriate at this location. But
Okay.
we
Any other
put it
question-
in there because it is within your discretion to require it. So.
Any other questions for staff from the board?
I do have a quick question. On that northeast corner, would any of the plantings block line of sight for traffic or people that are walking? I mean, I don't want, people coming out of that parking lot to accidentally hit in their car or a person.
They are, they're primarily consisting of grasses, so they're not going to be dense plantings, and the grasses that are in the streetscape right away are actually closer to the street sightline wise than these would be.
Okay.
And so if you look at it from the standpoint of where these are in relation to the corner of the building, they're, the building comes all the way out to the back of the sidewalk, so
Okay.
these are behind the building line and should
Okay.
not impact that.
I couldn't tell for sure. Thank you.
The tallest ones would be about 60 inches tall, and there's 7 of those. They're the feather reed grass, and the rest of them are, I believe, the tallest ones at mature height would be 48 inches, 36 or 48 inches at their
Okay.
tallest.
Thank
But-
you.
But the plants like bee balm they are not dense planting. They have a lot of open air between the branches and all, so.
That's a good question. Any other questions of staff? All right, I will open it up to the public. Sorry about that last one. Leslie, anything to add?
Yeah, thank you. Just curious on the grasses that have been proposed to be planted in there. Is it grasses that will be able to be easily maintained, and will some grasses not, for example, some of the planters in downtown Salina, what's been planted in there takes over everything else that's been planted, and then therefore it dies. So I guess my question is, and I'm not a plant person, but just wanting to make sure that what's been selected will grow well, easy to take care of, and it can be easily maintained.
Yes, we've taken these plans to the city forester and talked with him about the density of the plantings, and they are actually spaced a little bit lower density than you might normally do that, but that's to account for them filling in. And we actually discussed that exact issue, that some planters get overplanted at the beginning and they become too dense and hard to maintain. So the density of these plantings has his approval to be appropriate for that, to not overgrow the bed and be hard to maintain by staff.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no other comments, I'll bring it back to the board to entertain a motion.
You answered my question, well, my assumption about the south part of that being under the shade trees. I was going to ask why it didn't extend the same on the south, but you answered that question. So with that, I move that we approve option 1.
I second.
All right, option 1 has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. All right, moving on to administrative items. Do we have any administrative items today?
We do not have any administrative items to bring forward to you today. We have, in terms of other business or future business, we do have an application filed for your October 10th meeting, and that is proposed new signage for the Messenger. It's referred to the Messenger Clothing Company at the 200 block of South Santa Fe, and they have submitted some plans for adding some building signage, and so we have that under review and scheduled to be on your October 10th agenda. And then I guess I would report that the City Planning Commission approved the addition of outdoor seating and patio at Meddy's, which they were required to do through a conditional use permit. So we should start seeing some activity towards not only renovation but addition. And as we noted in our report, because the outdoor seating area will bump out from the north, they will bump the existing parking farther north, and a portion of it will actually go into the Mulberry right-of-way. But fortunately there, the right-of-way from Mulberry is 80 feet wide, so there's still plenty of room to have parking, a sidewalk. Sidewalk may have a jag in it, but the sidewalk will remain. And then if you're going by Campbell Plaza, you can see that it's completely shut down and under construction for the addition of a patio on the south side of the to becoming Jose Pepper's restaurant. So that permit has been issued and that work is underway. And I think it may either be the end of November or perhaps the full calendar year where Campbell Plaza will look like that while they get the patio installed there and then restore the plaza back. But they had to rip out some material and do some things that they will restore back.
And if you've driven by or walked by the old Lang Syne building at 101 North Santa Fe, Mr. Manley would have been on the board a couple meetings ago, and Maggie brought the exploratory demolition to the board. That has been approved, and they have a permit to explore and see what the facade looks like. I drove by today, and you can see on the upper facade, you can see some of the windows that they showed that had been covered up. So it's exciting to see that facade kind of becoming unearthed, and it'll be exciting to see what happens with that building. But that's currently taking place, so that's another thing to watch for in downtown.
And sometimes our board members are downtown and out on the sidewalks, and you can be our eyes and ears better than we can, because sometimes we get stuck in the office and don't get out and see things that you might see. So if you see things and you have questions about them or this or that, you can feel free to contact us between meetings or bring a list to the meetings and say, can you tell us about this? And we need you to be our eyes and ears sometimes, so.
Yep. Just curious about that one. Don't want to make it a thing, but let's say they choose to keep the mural all over the building. Is that just grandfathered in
Which one are we referring to?
on the old eggs line? Sorry, not saying the name
Yeah.
right.
I
That'd
couldn't
be a new
remember
one.
what the status of that was, but when I started working here, that mural was there, and there were a lot of people that weren't very fond of it, and they were happy it was covered up, but now it's reappeared. I don't think they plan to keep it that way. That's not their plan, to
Yep.
restore it back to its historical look, but
Yep.
that has been unearthed apparently, so now I'll have to drive by and look.
We'll cross that bridge if we have to.
It's a time capsule.
Yeah.
They picked the right date.
All right. Unfinished business. Do we have any today?
Nope, only
All right.
any inquiring questions that you have for us, so.
Public forum. Leslie, anything for us today?
Yeah, just one quick thing on the construction over at Jose Pepper's. Evidently, last evening, it was reported that a gentleman who, it was in the evening, tripped over there on some plywood. Do I let 1858 Properties know that? Do I call Hutton? Does the city go over there since it's city property?
I think you should start by reporting that to Hutton, because they're the ones that are supervising the job site. They chose the fencing and the perimeter, and that is their construction staging area. So if there's a concern about that, I would start with Hutton, but it certainly doesn't hurt to let Katie or somebody with 1858 Properties know that that had occurred.
Okay. And then one last question, and this may not be for this committee, but, and you may already be aware, evidently there's lots of flashing electricity going on over there, that there was some popping sounds reported by 2 downtown businesses, and when the popping sound from the fuse box on the mural wall would pop, the lights would flicker. I don't know, maybe it was a dance party, but there was some concern.
You're talking about the south wall of Campbell Plaza?
Yeah, the mural wall, that has the mural from Boom.
Okay. Mr. Michelson thinks he knows something about that.
So I don't have all of the exact details, but it was discussed earlier. Apparently they rolled up the string lights and put them against the building or something like that, and it was triggering the photocell. And it sounds like they've moved the lights, and they may be on constantly for a while until they, until they figure out something else. But they've disabled the photocell, I believe, or they're doing something to accommodate that to where it's not flashing.
Okay, thank you.
But
Yeah, 'cause-
we are aware of it. And
Okay,
they've
thank
made
you
Will,
so much.
Hutton
All right, thanks.
aware of it.
All right, moves us to adjournment unless there's anything else from the committee. All right, motion for adjournment
I move to adjourn.
and seconded.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you.